Welcome to our Tuesday, August 24th, 2021 regular business meeting of the East EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order N08-21, which suspends portions of the Brown Act, this meeting will be conducted remotely. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. The Redistricting Ad Hoc and Finance Administration Committees met this morning and will report out under item 13. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Could we please have roll call, Madam Secretary?
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present. Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I am here. I don't see myself in the Zoom you guys see me?
Neither do we. No, we do not see you.
I think you need to promote me to a panelist.
So we had you promoted, but for some reason you're still showing up as an attendee. So
Do you want me to log out and log back in again?
Let me see. I just promoted
Here we
you.
go.
You want to go ahead and, did she just hung up? Okay. And so we were on roll call, and President Lenny.
I'm here, so all present and accounted for. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. There were no announcements required from closed session. Before we go into public comment, I believe Director Young.
Yes, I would just like to make a brief statement of apology for my unintended hot mic moment at our last board meeting that happened during public comment. I was, no excuse. I was dealing with a lot of distractions that day and speaking when I thought I was on mute to people in the room, or my room here, the real room. And just want to apologize for any offense that was taken. I have apologized directly to the member of the public who was speaking at the time. And I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you. If members of the public wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. We start with comments on non-agenda items, which will be heard now, but comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. Secretary will track the time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded.
Okay. We have 5 speakers for public comment. I received a call from 2. One person wants to speak on item 12, but needs to leave the meeting early. And so that person will speak under public comment now. And I would need to check with the other 4 to see if they're speaking on item 12 or a non-agenda item. So give me one moment. So Alicia Chakrabarty, you should be allowed to unmute your mic. Can you let me know if it's item 12 or a non-agenda item?
Yes, item 12.
Okay, we will call you when that item is up. And Sophia K, you emailed earlier, and so I know it's for item 12. Eric L, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha. I'd like to speak on items 1, 7, and 12.
1, 7, and 12, okay. Writing that down. And then Lindsay Edelman, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Hi, good afternoon. I would also like to speak on item 12. I do have a meeting at 3, so I'm not sure if that will, if it should happen now or later, but item 12, please.
Okay. And I'm just going to confirm. Sophia K., you should be able to unmute your mic. You are speaking on item 12 as well?
I am.
Okay. And Artem Diachenko, item 12 or a non-agenda item?
Item 12.
Okay, thank you. Yvette Rivera, should be able to unmute your mic. Item 12 or a non-agenda item?
Non-agenda item.
Non-agenda item, okay. We will take your
Yes.
comment now, and your 3 minutes will start.
Hi, thank you. This morning I spoke at the board meeting and I referenced several issues that I believe violated either the Brown Act or the California Public Records Act. I just heard a few minutes ago Director Young apologizing for open board hot mic comments from last board meeting. I didn't mention Director Young this morning, but I did mention that the recording was doctored before it was posted to the EBMUD website. I had to write a letter to the board of directors asking if the recording was going to be restored, and letting the board know that I needed the litigation or the justification for doctoring the recording. Subsequently, the recording was restored. I do have copies of the undoctored and the doctored recording that I'll be posting to YouTube. The other issue I brought up was that is now looks like it's rectified. The board meeting started on time, so I won't cover that any further. The last thing that I brought up was what I believed was Director Linney's violation of the Brown Act at the last board meeting. I believe that he willfully disclosed a closed board litigation talking point when he responded to the factual allegations that I mentioned in the Ariel Bland and Saji Pierce lawsuit against Craig Spencer, Laura Costa, and EBMUD. After he made his comments, one was that he couldn't comment about litigation, and the other commenting about litigation, I decided to reread the Pierce Bland lawsuit, and because I thought maybe I missed something. So I read it, and just like the first time, I was disgusted about what I perceived as an abuse of power, discrimination and retaliation that was stated in the allegation of facts. But then I went further to look up the law firm that was representing Pierce and Bland. And I don't know if this board of directors has actually looked up the law firm that's representing Ms. Pierce and Ms. Bland, but she has a Yale degree, Yale law degree, and a master's and JD from Bolt Law School. And she doesn't strike me as a person that would take on a case with unfounded allegations. She's won in the Ninth Circuit, settled cases, or won against a bucket load of government agencies for discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, retaliation. All I'm going to end this comment period by saying is that I'm looking forward to that trial, because I'm going to be riveted, and I hope it's on Zoom, because I'll be able to have my popcorn and my 3D glasses when I hear the district's response to all of the allegations. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
So everyone else on the list is here to speak on item 12. So we'll take those comments at that time. And Eric wants to speak on item 1, which is the minutes. Go ahead, President Linney, if you want to proceed to the
All
consent
right.
calendar.
So I think we will then set aside item 1
It's 1 and 7, Doug. I think Eric said he wanted to speak on 7
It's
too.
1, 7, and 12. I was just taking one.
Okay.
I'll
So,
move 2 through 6 and 8 through 10.
do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Director McIntosh. Then without further discussion, let's move to a roll call vote on
Yep.
that.
Director
Motion.
Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, so that motion carries. We're now on to item 1, and why don't we hear from Eric Larson?
Eric, your
Eric,
3
you're
minutes
on.
will start now, and your mic is unmuted.
Okay, thank you, Risha. This is Eric Larson, President, AFSCME Local 444. In the board meeting August 10th, during the discussion in which the motion was developed to provide policy direction to management regarding COVID vaccinations and leave policy. It was my understanding as the various directors were speaking, was that the intent of the directors and the intent of the motion, as I heard it formulated by the directors, was that after September 30th, when SB 95 supplemental COVID leave expires, that vaccinated persons would have that supplemental COVID leave extended beyond September 30th, such that if, for instance, I were vaccinated and I had a family member who was COVID positive, or I was symptomatic and not yet tested, and therefore prevented from reporting to work, and if I had any SB 95 supplemental COVID leave left, that would be available for me to not report to work and not expose other members of the workforce from the vaccine or from the virus. As the motion was restated by General Manager Clifford Chan, the motion was apparently narrowed to cover only employees who were directed to quarantine due to a workplace exposure, which, if you are vaccinated under current CDC guidelines, there are none. There's no workplace exposure. There's no need to quarantine a vaccinated person for a workplace exposure under current CDC guidelines. So I would request that the minutes be held until there is opportune time to review the video recording and verify that the intent of the board was actually captured as the motion was promulgated. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Eric.
Can I ask a clarifying, I just want to ask a clarifying question. I'm looking at page 7 of the minutes. And so Eric, you're saying that you understood that after September 30th, when the district supplemental COVID-19 leave expires, that someone who is exposed and needs to quarantine outside of work would still be offered the district COVID-19 leave?
That anyone who was vaccinated after September 30th, who was required to isolate for any COVID exposure reason, would be afforded that supplemental leave benefit. That is what I understood the intent of the board to be during that discussion, and I think that I don't think that was correctly captured in the minutes. In the minutes, it seems to more specifically identify a workplace exposure, which in my recollection, none of the board members spoke on specific workplace exposure. It was not until General Manager Chan restated the motion and more narrowly defined the district leave coverage to be extended only to employees who were quarantined due to a workplace exposure.
So, President Linney, maybe I'll jump in here. I mean, my recollection of the discussion and the motion that was put forward that the board voted on does reflect what was discussed. And I think there's an opportunity in item 12 to discuss whether or not you would like to change that and extend the SB 95 balance for fully vaccinated employees. So maybe that's a discussion when we get to item 12.
I was going to suggest the same thing, that this actually captured what I remember from our discussion and motion. And, you know, this item is on the agenda later, and we'll have an opportunity to revisit any fine tuning we might want to try and make at that time. But thank you for your comment, Eric. So do I have a motion to pass the minutes as they are?
So moved. Frank Mellon.
Okay.
Second, John Coleman.
A motion and a second. Secretary, can you please call roll?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
This is my back and forth on mute. Yes.
okay, President Linney.
Yes. All right. Next item is item 7. Eric, I think you're up for that again. This is the item to authorize actions related to the rental of fully maintained and operated dump truck services.
Eric,
Thank
your
you.
3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Thank you, President Lenny and Pepper Chan. AFSCME Local 444 objects to East Bay Municipal Utility District's extending the fully maintained and operated dump truck contract at a value of $3.7 million. The district blew through the last FMNO dump truck contract this last year. Largely in response to de facto hiring freeze of 444 represented truck drivers and heavy transport operators during the height of the COVID pandemic, in which time recruitment stopped in-person testing. I think there were over 8 vacancies occurred during that period. Since that time, recruitment has resumed in-person testing. For heavy transport operators, there have been 5 new hires, and there are 3 remaining on the hiring list. So if there are any more vacancies occur, there are only 3 people left on the list to pull from. For truck drivers, there's been 1 hire and 7 eligibles remain. These lists are far too small, heavy transport operators and truck driver lists need to be open and continuous so that we can fill those positions as quickly as possible. Better truck driver, rental truck management needs to be monitored through the district's FERT systems so that we can eliminate the need for continuous rental trucks and use rental trucks as appropriate only during peak workload and to supplement our internal workforce. One further question that I have regarding the FMNO dump trucks is whether the contractors will be required to be vaccinated, or will our truck drivers and heavy transport operators who opt not to be vaccinated be relegated to second-class jobs with contractors who don't provide the benefits and security that a job here at East Bay MUD provides? Thank you.
Okay.
Clifford, can you, oh, Frank, you have your hand up? I was going to ask Clifford.
Well, let's let
Clifford
Clifford respond, but I'll wait after Clifford's thoughts.
Yes, so thank you, Eric, for your comments. And we did include last week an information memo that discussed the comments that Eric brought up. We have 67 positions here at East Bay MUD that does truck driving activities. 37 are heavy transport operators and 30 are truck drivers. All the positions are currently filled with the exception of one truck driver who recently voluntarily demoted. We've also shared in that information memo that we did 4 recruitments each for each of those classifications, so a total of 8 recruitments in the last 4 years, and that we have been able to fill all those positions. The other thing that we shared, we had a discussion about this at the planning committee, at the last planning committee to talk about this one, and we shared with the committee that the hours of FMNO time that we use per mile has decreased in the last 8 years, and last year it's at the lowest level that it's been in the last 8 years. Last year, because of COVID, we did have 9,500 hours of staff time that was affected due to COVID, and that required $1.1 million of the FMNO contracts to offset that cost. So that increase that we saw was, again, in large part affected by the COVID pandemic. So that's just some background. We could share that presentation for the full board if you'd like to see it, or maybe I'll stop there and let Director Mellon make any comments he'd like.
Well, 2 things. One was, yeah, we had a pretty good discussion about it, and some of it involved the training time that was involved. But I think Eric brings up a point, and I would simply make as a suggestion that if we have ongoing vacancies, then we treat it like we do other positions, but we keep it open. If we don't have ongoing vacancies and we're simply doing peak work, then that's a different story altogether. So that's what I was going to bring up. However, I do think he brought up a very good point, because these folks that we contract with, are we going to be requiring them to show proof of vaccination? I think we should, because by golly, they're going to be coming in contact with our employees, and we don't need any more other sources of potential infection.
Yeah, so on the 2 items, so when we have positions that do change often, we do have pretty much an open list. So a good example are the plumbers. We have a list that we keep working through, and it's typically 70 or 80 deep. For other positions, we're very careful about running continuous recruitments, because you can run a continuous recruitment. It takes time for the applicant to apply, and if we don't have an opening, they give up on East Bay MUD because they wonder why haven't they heard from us after they applied. It's because there's no position. And so what we shared in the information memo that we sent out was we haven't had difficulty recruiting those particular positions. As far as the contractors having the same requirements as the district for the vaccination, that has been a discussion. And I have Mike Ambrose here, who can get into the specifics of what we're going to require of contractors and vaccination.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we have a number of contracts with FM&O vendors. I don't know the exact number, but it's quite a few. And so we'll issue a change order for the contracts going forward to make them consistent with the requirements that we have for our own employees. But that's and then new contracts will have the new requirements automatically included.
So that means that they're going to be required to have the vaccination, right?
It'll be whatever's required of our own employees, yes.
Come on, Mike. It's a simple yes or no question.
The answer I think Mike's trying to say is yes.
Yes.
What we require of our employees, we're going to require of the contractors.
Okay.
That's great. Any other questions or information that board members need before voting on this item? Anyone want a presentation?
I'm prepared
Do I
to
hear a
move
motion?
the item.
Frank, you moved the item?
Yes, I am.
I will second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. That carries unanimously. That finishes off our consent calendar items. We're now on to determination and discussion. Our first item has to do with the McCollum Aqueduct number 2.
Yes. So on August 6th, we were notified of a leak on the McCollum Aqueduct number 2, and staff made a temporary repair. McCollum Aqueduct number 2 is important for many reasons, including being able to maximize the operation of Freeport, which, just as a reminder, is at least scheduled to start later next month. After investigating the condition of the pipe and what you'll see from the presentation, the very challenging location of the leak, on August 18th, I consulted with President Lenny to declare an emergency so that we can expedite the repair. I will just share with the board that yesterday the aqueduct started leaking again at this location. Jimmy Loe, the Director of Engineering and Construction, is going to provide more information on the leak location and our repair plan.
Good afternoon, President Lenny and members of the board. I'm going to go straight into this. We have a leak on the McCollum Aqueduct number 2, and this slide shows the location of that. It's in Stockton, in a mostly residential area with a little bit of commercial. And the leak is actually located underneath a Union Pacific Railroad bridge. So this slide shows two pictures. On the left is the Union Pacific Railroad bridge. There are two kind of openings underneath the bridge. The one on the right is where McCollum Aqueduct number 1 is located. The one on the left is where McCollum Aqueduct number 2 is located, and that's where we have the leak. The picture on the right actually shows that location. This bridge was constructed in 1927 to accommodate the construction of McCollum Aqueduct number 1. And then McCollum Aqueduct number 2 was installed in 1940s and constructed in that second opening there. That picture also shows there's a fair amount of debris that is collected underneath the bridge from the bridge ballast over time. So this is just a brief timeline as General Manager Clifford Chan had mentioned. We got notified of the leak on August the 6th. A temporary repair was made to that leak, and I have a picture that shows a little bit close-up of that. And then staff mobilized to assess what the nature of the leak on August the 9th, and we discovered a fair amount of corrosion on the crown of the pipe. That's the top half of the pipe. Did some more work and completed an exploratory potholing investigation, and then developed a repair plan. On August the 18th, there was an emergency declaration, which we are asking for ratification of today. And as Clifford mentioned, last night, we discovered another leak on the same pipeline in the same location. So what are the risks to us of this leak? We have a risk of failure under normal operations. So as you will see in the next slide, the corrosion has stripped away a significant portion of the steel on the crown of the pipe, and that makes it more susceptible to failure under the pressure that we need to operate at. A failure in this location will affect our current drought operation. We need McCallum Aqueduct number 2 in service in order to be able to take FSCC water. And also a failure in this location will obviously have significant impact and liability on railroad operations, and we certainly don't want that to happen. With the volume of water that could escape in a failure, it could also affect some of the residential areas. So here's a close-up of the pipe at the leak location. And the temporary repair here was essentially a redwood plug that was put into the pipe, and you can see the kind of rocks on top. That's kind of what was holding it down. On the right is some of the steel that has peeled off of the top of the aqueduct. The steel in that location is about a ½ inch thick. And you can see this piece that is peeled off is actually more than a ½ inch. So we've lost about half the thickness of the steel at that location, and that's why it no longer would be sufficient to hold the operating pressures that we need to operate under. So how do we plan to fix this leak? The idea here is we think that the extent of the leak is about, extent of corrosion is about 10 feet along the length of the pipe and about 6 feet along the crown of the pipe. So the idea here would be to remove the pipe in the area where it's been corroded, and then replace it with a new segment of pipe. We do have pipe that's available at our Bixler yard that we have stored just for emergencies like this, where we need to replace some segments of pipe. So the material is already available, which will help us accelerate the repair. And then put in the new stick of pipe, weld it in, and attach it with butt straps, and then backfill over the pipe and then put it back in service.
Jimmy, isn't there mortar lining in that pipe?
Yes, there is mortar lining. The pipe is both mortar lined and mortar coated, and the pipe that we have, I believe, is mortar lined. We will need to, where we make the connection, there will need to be some additional mortar added once we put it back in.
Director Coleman, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. A couple of questions. This leads to first, how long would the moat pipe be out of commission to do this?
So that's actually on my next slide. If there are no other particular questions on this, but
well, I'll move on to another question, and then I'll get the next one in a second. Then, are we evaluating the rest of our lines, the 90 miles, to make sure that there are no other situations like this?
And Dave Briggs will probably add to this, but we monitor the aqueducts regularly, We have, staff that continuously go right along the lines of the aqueducts for just this kind of situation, to make sure that they're in operating condition and nothing untoward is happening. So that is continuing. We had additional emphasis on this location. And as I mentioned earlier, they discovered another leak in this area last night.
Okay, so that begs the question. We have the leak here, which we clearly need to get fixed ASAP. How long does it take to get to the situation it is today? It didn't happen overnight.
No, it didn't happen overnight. Corrosion does take a while to take effect. If you remember from the slide, it is a pretty, it's not completely inaccessible, but it is a difficult location. It's not very visible. And so it is possible that this area had been missed until it actually leaked. And also it's buried in a lot of locations, so it would have taken time for the corrosion could have occurred unseen and then finally surfaced.
I guess I'll just ask this for Clifford then, if we can have a memo as to how many man hours, how many person hours a year are we dedicating to checking the pipes, our aqueducts, and what is our process when they're not visible by air or by walking in order to assess their condition, so that we hopefully don't have something like this in the future.
Yeah, I can summarize that in a memo, and maybe Jimmy can also talk about some of the capital projects that we have to do the inspection and upgrades in sections of the McCollum Aqueduct too. So, there are areas that we have known issues, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have had capital efforts to actually investigate on the interior of the pipe and inspect those, and we do have a couple of projects that are actually currently in the CIP to recoat the exterior of the aqueducts where they cross the delta, and also to line the interior of the aqueducts where we know that the lining has deteriorated.
But nevertheless, we'll provide a memo, Director Coleman, with the information you're asking for. Director Young, I see your hand raised.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. It just took me a second. Hang on, make sure I'm on mute and not, So my question actually goes more to sort of, causation. I know that our aqueduct's been there a long time, but does the presence of, is that an active Union Pacific bridge? Are freight trains going over there
yes,
all the time?
Yes, it is active.
Do we think that that's part of, that there's a contributing factor there that's helped accelerate it being there, or is it just coincidence?
It's hard to say. I think there's a chance that could be a contributing factor. The ballast on the bridge continually falls down into that opening underneath. Maybe that had something to do with it. It really is hard to tell. We have not pondered that to that extent at the moment.
Maybe it's just because of the way it's drawn, but it kind of seems obvious to me that that's part of the problem. Maybe, I don't know how many places our aqueducts fall under a right-of-way like that, but
And as part of this emergency declaration, we do have to regularly report on the spending, and we will have to close out the emergency. And maybe at that time, if we have some additional information, Director Young, on what we might speculate is the cause of the failure, we can share that information at that time.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. I think the other thing is that we know what we know right now. We can see what extent, but it may extend a little further. So as we start the repair, we do have a contingency to, if we need to have more than about a 45-foot length of pipe in there, it may need to go longer, but we won't know that till we actually take the aqueduct out of service and start to excavate.
All right, Jimmy, I think you have one more slide.
Yeah, so the last slide is our next steps. And so this afternoon, we are asking you to ratify the declaration of emergency. And our next steps, we do have a contractor who we've identified, Ranger Pipelines. We actually had met with them this morning to hopefully finalize a contract. We think the repair can be completed in about 4 weeks. A rough estimate of the cost is that it'll probably be about $700,000 to $1 million. And the other elements we have are really coordination with Union Pacific. We need to make sure that the work that we do doesn't impact the bridge unnecessarily, so we'll be monitoring the settlement. And we need to coordinate with UP so that as trains are still operating on the tracks, we don't interfere with that operation.
So maybe before we actually ask the board to take action on this particular item, I do want to share, I was just looking this up, but that section of pipe was actually part of the capital program for retrofitting and upgrade. So this was an area that we knew that needed to have work done. It just failed a little earlier than we expected. So with that, are there any other questions for Jimmy?
I'm going to move to ratify the declaration, but we've used Ranger Pipelines on various projects, and they bailed us out a couple of times when we had a bad contractor, and they also built the Southern Loop pipeline. Those guys know a thing or two about pipes, so that's why I would feel comfortable making a motion to ratify.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Director Mellon, seconded by Director Patterson. Any other comments, questions? All right. Secretary, please call roll.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Present. Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. That carries unanimously. Thank you for the information. Let's get that repaired and get back to full capacity there.
So the next item is item 12. This is on the coronavirus update, and I don't know if you want to hear the presentation first or if you want to hear public comment first.
Let's see. Why don't we all benefit by hearing the presentation and then get the public comment, if that's okay.
That sounds good. So we have Dave Briggs here, Director of Operations and Maintenance, and he'll provide the update. Before he starts, I just want to summarize the policy that was discussed on August 10th, just as a framework for this discussion. So what was discussed on August 10th, it was that beginning September 6th, employees would need to provide proof of vaccination or test weekly for COVID-19. The testing would be on the employee's time and at their expense, with the exception of those with legitimate medical or religious reasons. After September 30th, the district paid leave will be limited to fully vaccinated employees exposed to COVID-19 at work. Employees will also be required to get vaccinated after FDA approval of a vaccine, with the exception of those with legitimate medical or religious reasons. We did add a 6-week time frame for when employees would need to be fully vaccinated. That was something that was not discussed on August 10th, but it was necessary for us to put a time frame on it. But to be clear, that 6 weeks was not discussed on August 10th. We also discussed on August 10th that we would be meeting and conferring with the unions to discuss the impacts of the new policy. And with that framing, I'll pass it off to Dave Briggs.
Excuse me. We have one person for public comment, and they need to leave the meeting. They were going to speak under, I think the person left, so maybe a moot point. They did. Okay. All right.
Okay, good afternoon, President Linney, members of the board. I'm going to give you an update not only on the broader circumstances, but also on the policy that Clifford was framing a moment ago. Okay, so on slide 2, we're showing the positivity rate in Alameda and Contra Costa County. And although there's an indication that this increase, that the latest surge that we're in is flattening, it's no guarantee what's going to happen next. But some of these trends are also reflected in statewide numbers, the district's own numbers, Santa Clara County, another major county in the Bay Area, Los Angeles County. So we are seeing a flattening out. Hopefully we are over the peak of the surge and can now trend downward, but that remains to be seen. And the vaccination rates, which we're showing on slide 3, these are slightly higher than the ones we showed 2 weeks ago at the last board meeting. But I would highlight the column on the right, which is the partially vaccinated set of numbers that's associated with folks who have at least had 1 dose of the vaccine. That actually has gone up at a much higher rate, albeit these are all small increases compared to 2 weeks ago. Clearly, there's been an uptick in vaccination rates in our counties, as we see by the higher rate of increase in the partially vaccinated column. So I suspect that we'll see the fully vaccinated rate start to climb here at a little bit of a higher rate shortly. Slide 4 shows the numbers at the district. These are from last week. So just to catch you up, we are at 119 employee positives with 22 contractors to date. We had 4 over the weekend, including Monday. Roughly half, 54% of the cases in the last couple of months have been so-called breakthrough or confirmed positives from fully vaccinated staff. But over the last week, we've had 6 in the last week, and 4 of those 6 have involved unvaccinated staff. So at least for the last 7 days, a much lower rate for vaccinated people positive at the district. Roughly 50 people are being quarantined at the district. Most of those are based, nearly all are based on work-based exposure, and nearly all of those are unvaccinated staff. Little has changed at the state level with respect to policy or direction, but as the board heard 2 weeks ago, the state's moving forward with, for state employees, they must be vaccinated or undergo regular testing. The exception is those in the healthcare sector must be vaccinated. There's no option to test. And then the governor announced, I think, a couple weeks ago that teachers must be vaccinated in public and private schools. Nothing at the federal level regarding the CDC's guidance. That remains, the CDC continues to recommend booster shots, and that's both for at-risk populations as well as the general population. The big news, of course, is the FDA's normal use authorization approval for the Pfizer vaccine, which occurred yesterday on August 23rd. And we're expecting the Moderna vaccine to receive normal use authorization in the second half of September, roughly 3 weeks later or so. The FDA is also actively reviewing approvals for both of those vaccines, plus the Johnson & Johnson for additional booster shots when those are recommended. At the county level, the health orders remain the same in the last couple of weeks, no changes there, and there's no requirement at the county level for county level employees to be vaccinated. Other policies around us. The board is aware that the city and county of San Francisco, with the normal use authorization happening yesterday, employees in that county have until, I believe, November 1st to be fully vaccinated. And at the university level, both University of California and California State, there's various schedules and deadlines in place for students and faculty to be vaccinated as we move through the fall. Throughout the Bay Area and throughout the state of California, various cities are implementing either a full vaccination policy for their employees or a vaccine policy that requires, if they're not being vaccinated, that requires them to be regularly tested. So there's many, many examples of this going on all around us. Clifford just summarized this slide. I will just show it here in case there's any additional comment at this point. If not, I will keep moving through to the end of the presentation, or we can wait towards the end.
Maybe wait till the end, Dave. Go to your last slide, and then we can hear some public comment.
Okay, so I'll just just to round off the policy here, we're actively meeting and conferring with the unions. In a couple of days, we should, or actually, I think later today, if not early tomorrow morning, we should be able to distribute instructions for employees on how to upload their vaccination status in a confidential manner. Our HR people have been very hard at work, and our ISD people making sure that process is ready to go. So we'll issue instructions very shortly. Soon after that, we'll issue instructions on how employees that are undergoing regular testing, how they can submit those testing results to the district on a regular basis. So those instructions will be close on the heels of the ones related to the vaccine proof later today. We have been working at hearing lots of comments from employees and unions about confidentiality, and we have met with our internal folks to make sure we have all of those safeguards in place for people's confidential data. And we are going to be able to explain that when we produce documentation that has answers to many of these questions about some of the details of the policy that will be included in them. We will explain the exemption process, how it works, how to find an application, what are the steps involved, what types of information do you need, who are the decision makers. That will be explained. All of this will be wrapped up into, among other places, it'll be included in a frequently asked questions document, which we're rapidly building and reviewing internally. That will be shortly released. And then also in conjunction with Meet and Confer, we're going to do as much outreach as possible, not only to the individual service yards, but other employee groups to make sure that they understand all of the details of the policy and know what's expected of them. So with that, I will listen to your comments and the comments of others.
Great, let's go ahead to public comment, unless there's immediate questions from the board for clarification. All right, Risha, we're ready for some public comment.
Okay, I have 3 written comments just to read into the records. The first one is Gary.
Why don't we take the people who've been waiting here first,
Okay,
before going to the comments.
all right. We will start with Alicia Chakrabarty. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Okay, thanks, Risha. I'm Alicia Chakrabarty, the manager of Wastewater Environmental Services Division, but I'm here as an employee and also as a ratepayer. And I just want to thank you for making the hard decision to require vaccination of all employees. I think it's regrettable that we're in this situation. And as a society, we accept a wide variety of limits on our personal freedoms for the greater good. And the limit that we're talking about here is really a small price to pay. Yes, there are risks to taking a vaccine, but the risk of not taking it is so much greater. And I think the evidence is now very clear on that. So I really applaud your leadership in taking this difficult step and moving the district in the right direction to ending the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Next, we have Sophia Kay. Sophia, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your time starts now.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sophia Kalidas. My affiliation is I'm an employee, and my topic is the vaccine mandate. I want to commend the board's leadership with the vaccine mandate. The truth is, you don't know anyone else's health situation, their families, or your friends. Consider those with invisible illnesses and the immunocompromised who make up 2.7% of the general public and who, despite being vaccinated, account for nearly 50% of hospitalized breakthrough cases. The vaccine mandate will reduce the likelihood to make the person next to you grievously ill by reducing the virus load in the vaccinated and requiring testing in the unvaccinated. We all have the right to bodily autonomy, but we do not have the right to make others sick. Our bodily autonomy ends where someone else can be irreparably harmed. I support the vaccine mandate because it will help ensure a safe and healthy work environment. We're in this one together, so we all have to do our part. Let's work together so we can put this COVID situation behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Lindsay Edelman, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your time starts now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Directors, General Manager Chan, and colleagues listening in. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak and share my thoughts today. As a person who is vaccinated and has lost a family member to COVID, I strongly encourage you all to reconsider the vaccination mandate policy at this time. While I believe that everyone should get vaccinated unless advised from a certified medical professional, I do not believe that a mandated vaccination is the appropriate approach at this time. Less than a month ago, we went from being able to not wear masks inside if we were vaccinated and have since 180'd to wearing masks again, and now are subjected to mandated vaccines and a loss of COVID leave if we are not vaccinated. With such a turbulent turn of direction, how can you expect all employees to have buy-in on this? All the while, we have had no on-site vaccination testing available for all employees at a work location or incentives to get vaccinated. This is very standard for organizations, including the ones you are trying to mirror with this mandated vaccination policy. We need to increase our vaccinated employees, but dividing up the workplace and forcing people to get vaccinated or get tested on their own time is not the way. I truly believe that this approach will end up causing divisions amongst employees and a loss of dedicated workforce. I am confident that the district has more resources that could be utilized to increase these vaccination rates. In solidarity, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Next, we have Artem.
Hi, my name is Artem Dichenko. I'm a laboratory supervisor. I have been with the district for 8 years. First of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the board of directors and Clifford for making the decision to prioritize safety and well-being of employees, their families, and the community we serve. I believe the vaccination requirement is an important policy based on science and facts and is perfectly aligned with district values of teamwork, stewardship, integrity, and respect. As was mentioned previously, employees with sincerely held religious beliefs and valid medical reasons will be exempt from the policy. These employees, as well as immunocompromised staff, will rely on all of us for protection. I cannot think of a better expression of the teamwork and respect for one another. Delta variant is one of the most contagious respiratory viruses known to humanity. We know from CDC and other reports that fully vaccinated people do not transmit this virus at the same rate as unvaccinated people. And when breakthrough cases occur, they are contagious for a shorter period of time. Recently, UC Davis Medical Center reported a 10-fold reduction in positivity rate among its healthcare workers as over 90% of staff achieved vaccination. The state now mandates vaccination for state workers, healthcare workers, education staff, but it also encourages all other employers to require vaccination against COVID. Under the OSHA Act, employers are responsible for providing a safe and healthy workplace free from recognized hazards likely to cause serious physical harm or death. On August 13, OSHA issued a recommendation for employers to mandate vaccination against COVID. I believe not implementing these recommendations at this stage of the pandemic would not only be irresponsible, but also reckless. The Laboratory Services Division is not amenable to telecommuting, so nearly all staff must report to work on site, as we have done throughout the entire pandemic. As a supervisor, it's hard enough to lose employees unexpectedly for a short period of time, which may happen to vaccinated staff due to mild symptoms, but different public health quarantine rules apply to unvaccinated staff who typically must quarantine for a minimum of 10 days if they were exposed. Unexpectedly losing employees for a long period of time is disruptive and should be prevented, or which it can be for the most part, since we know that nearly all people hospitalized with COVID are unvaccinated. Having workplace vaccination requirement will help minimize disruption to our essential services, and we owe it to our ratepayers. And finally, I'd like to stress that many employees have children younger than 12, not yet eligible for vaccination. For example, as a parent of a 4-year-old, I do believe my exposure risk is reduced if I'm surrounded by vaccinated staff, so I'm less likely to transmit the virus to my unvaccinated child. Children are at risk because even mild cases may lead to long-term COVID symptoms. Once again, thank you for your clear leadership on this issue.
All right, thank you. Any other speakers?
Yes, we have Jason Canopa. You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jason, an employee here at EBMUD, and I have some concerns I would like to voice as well as an alternative option. On May 21st, 2021, OSHA revoked recent enforcement of 29 CFR 1904. The 1904 stated that employees that are mandated to be vaccinated and have an adverse reaction are recordable, which granted said employee protections by the use of worker comp. This concerns me as it's easy to mandate a policy when there's no recourse for the mandated. There is no liability for injury, and in the case of severe injury, there is no protection for said employee aside from accrued sick time. If this policy is for employee safety, I encourage the board to develop and implement a protection policy for employees that might have an adverse reaction to the vaccination. This protection policy would alleviate some of the hesitancy that has been voiced, and I would hope that the protection policy be written to encompass the entirety of illness due to an adverse reaction. On July 27th, the CDC updated its masking guidance for fully vaccinated people. This decision was based on data showing similar viral loads in the vaccinated and unvaccinated, which indicated vaccinated can transmit Delta. On August 5th, Dr. Rochelle Walensky stated that our vaccines are working exceptionally well with breakthrough cases, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. On August 18th, the FDA announced booster shots at 8 months starting this fall. In just 22 days, we learned that viral loads are now similar. The vaccinated can transmit Delta variant, and booster shots will be required to maintain protection. For the safety of our employees, I hope the board takes this information and offers testing at no cost to the employee, regardless of vaccination status. Furthermore, now knowing regardless of vaccination status spread is likely, I suggest to the board that those who have immunocompromised or children who cannot be vaccinated at home and have the ability to telecommute be available and allowed to telecommute, as home is the safest place for them. It was stated multiple times in the August 10th meeting that this is a new virus and these are new times, and I agree that these unprecedented times require unprecedented protections not yet seen in the workspace. EBMUD can once again emerge as an industry leader by implementing worker protections and showing the country that it is possible to take care of your employees both physically and protect them financially. I would like to propose another option. Instead of mandatory vaccination, we stick with what we have seen works: masking and social distancing. The spikes in infection only appeared to increase when the mask mandate was removed. We made it through a year and a half with masks and distancing and continue to do so. I feel it would be a rush to push vaccination and open fully, as we are seeing in the past few weeks that the vaccine is not as effective with the Delta variant. We will only learn later if booster shots will boost immunity or if the new variants like Lambda and Delta Plus will just as easily be transmitted regardless of vaccination status. Regardless of vaccination status, EBMUD employees are not recklessly trying to contract and spread COVID. However, healthy, unvaccinated, masked employees are being accused of spreading it to those who are vaccinated. That accusation is hard for me to wrap my head around. This is an opportunity to become the industry leader in an alternative prevention program. Show the world that both vaccinated and unvaccinated employees can be safe, responsible, and most importantly, return to the diversity and inclusion that EBMUD so proudly promotes. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this feedback for my team. Thank you.
Next, we have Wendy Ibarra. Wendy should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Good afternoon, members of the board and public. I am Wendy Ibarra, and I am the second vice president of ASME 2019. Today, I'm going to go ahead and share with you a comment that we received from one of our members, which is one that is very common and that we've heard through the last 2 weeks. This came from a member that could not be present during this meeting, so let me share it with you. Board members, please understand that implementing a mandate for mandatory vaccination to maintain my job leaves me not feeling empowered to make the best choices I can for myself and my family. But it builds a resentment towards the district. If I get vaccinated, if I can still contract the virus because vaccination does not prevent COVID-19. The best prevention are using masks and social distancing, which are two things that we're already doing at EBMUD. Please reconsider your position on mandatory vaccination, as it is not your arm who will feel the needle and not your family that will be affected by any potential side effects that are still unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Okay. We have 3 written comments just to read into the records. I won't, some of them are kind of long. I won't read all of it. We have a public comment from employee Gary Palhegi, and if I messed up that last name, forgive me. It's about COVID mandates and the August 24th meeting. And in short, he is writing to express opposition to forced mandates of any kind. This email was submitted to the Board of Directors, and it will be provided as a part of the written record. The second comment is from Michael Hartlaub, employee of East Bay MUD, and he couldn't make the meeting today, but he wanted to thank the board for the decision on the COVID-19 vaccine mandates, and his written comments will be a part of the record. Next comment is from Gistand Williams, employee, and he wanted to let the board know that the mandate and rule changes around leave couldn't come soon enough, and wanted to thank the board for writing in support of the vaccine mandate, and this will be a part of the record. I have two more hands for public comment. Eric L., you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha. This is Eric Larson, President of AFSCME Local 444. Following my comments from this morning, I restate that advances in medical science have provided new vaccines that are proven to be effective at reducing the severity of illness of COVID-19 and the likelihood of hospitalization due to infection with COVID-19 virus for those who've contracted the virus, but have not reduced the transmissibility, merely the severity. This is terrific, but it should remain a decision made by the individual in consultation with their healthcare provider, not their employer. AFSCME Local 444 opposes the mandatory vaccination policies and requests the board put a pause on the policy as they did with the return to work policy. Roll back the mandatory vaccine policy passed at the last board meeting. Allow employees to consult with their healthcare provider, not as a condition of employment. A decision made by the individual based on the risks and benefits provided by the vaccine, not their ability to pay rent or buy food. The employer needs to provide safe working conditions by preventing transmission through providing masks and enforcing a mask wearing policy. Please leave medical decisions to the individuals informed by their healthcare provider. Please roll back the mandatory vaccination policy, provide alternatives such as regular employee paid testing consistent with the state of California, available for both vaccinated and unvaccinated alike, because vaccinated people appear to be as likely to be contagious COVID-19 carriers as unvaccinated people. The vaccine is not providing immunity, it is reducing the severity of illness. It's, I think, a great advance in medical science. I personally am vaccinated. I encourage people to speak with their healthcare provider and make their decision about whether they want to be vaccinated with their healthcare provider. Extend additional supplemental leave for vaccinated people. That's a reasonable policy decision if you want to encourage vaccinations. But termination for employment for unvaccinated is entirely unreasonable and unacceptable. And AFSCME 444 objects to such a policy. There has been no data presented indicating that vaccination stop transmission or will stop the virus. In fact, the only data that has been presented by Mr. Briggs shows that when the mask mandates were lifted, the rate of infection increased. The data correlates with mask wearing, not with vaccinations. I would like to see a similar trend posted with the increase in the rate of vaccinations and the incidence of contraction of the virus. We haven't seen that. Please allow medical decisions to be made between the patient and the physician, not employer mandates on a workforce that has reported every day during this pandemic to provide water and sanitation to our service territory and to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Next, we have Cindy Green. Cindy, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you. My name is Cindy Green. I'm an employee at the district and also a ratepayer. I wanted to thank you for your decision to mandate vaccination among employees and contractors. I am a mother of a child who is currently unvaccinated and awaiting vaccine, and the scene out there is, for me, is very, very scary. I recently came back from Texas where there are no ICU beds left. Primarily in the entire state, where getting in a car accident could be the difference between you not getting an ICU bed while someone else is taking it. We need to take vaccination seriously. We need to approach this problem through the three prongs that people have discussed here today: mask wearing, social distancing, and taking and having a vaccine. There are people who can't make these choices, but basically your choice is affecting everybody else. And I just wanted to thank the board for considering mandatory vaccination. Obviously, for folks who can't get the vaccine for medical reasons, there's always there's always that. Basically, sorry, I would just like to express my support for vaccination. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
We have one more person. Lauren S. You should be able to unmute your mic.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, my name is Lauren Spolina. I'm an employee at the district. I've worked here for 8 years. And I just wanted to express that I believe mandatory vaccine policy should be rolled back or at least paused at this point in time. As you've all heard today, it's been quite divisive amongst employees at the district. And this is a topic that rightfully so, people feel passionately about on both sides, and I respect that. And I feel that the district should respect that as well. I feel that a mandate that puts people's employment at stake here is coercive in nature. It's not something that fosters teamwork. It's not something that fosters respect. It causes great division. And I urge the board to reconsider or at least suspend or delay this policy until we have more further data. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
And President Lenny, we have one more speaker. Rachel, you should be able to unmute your mic.
You can just say another speaker.
Okay, another speaker.
One more. And we welcome anyone who still feels the an urge to address the board on this.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I have been at the district for 4 years, and I do oppose the mandate. I do think that further considerations need to be taken. What we've been doing with the mask wearing and social distancing has worked. I believe that can even be pushed further. There are a lot of positions that can be performed through telecommuting. There are a lot of positions where we're in the field and we're not around any other workers, minimal contact with any other workers. I think those positions can even be further accommodated to even have no contact. And I believe that this is infringing on my rights as far as what I can choose to do with my body. I don't feel that it's really a choice when I'm told benefits or pay or even my job is going to be lost if I don't do what is mandated. That isn't really a choice, and it's very discriminatory in my, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that there are other options. There should be other considerations, something that we can come to an agreement on for those whom are comfortable with the vaccine and those who are not, because we all have the right to choose what we do with our body. Thank you.
President Lenny, we have another speaker.
All right.
All right. Sean Barrow, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. My name is Sean Barrow. I'm Construction and Maintenance Superintendent for Central Area. And I really didn't want to have to say anything because after 27 years at the district, whatever the district has put in front of me, I just followed. This is the first time that I believe that something that's happening needs to happen for a specific reason. Let me try to explain to you the inner life of a service yard. Since the pandemic started, we've been here. Okay, so for the last 22 months, my staff and I have showed up, and we've done whatever it takes to keep water in the pipe. So what that looks like for us is that as the things have changed, i.e., social distancing, wearing masks, driving single vehicles, it's been kind of tough, but we've managed to do that. As the virus has changed, things have looked worse. It was pretty obvious to me that once the mask came off and we started getting a ton of positives, that there was something wrong with the system. So because of that, because I'm a father, because I like to see all of my staff healthy, I believe that vaccination is the only way to go. My other concern, and I think this is important, some of the numbers that came out was that it said that 72% of the district was vaccinated, right? We're about to embark upon a position to where we're going to have to provide proof of that, right? I think that we're going to find out that some of those numbers may be a little bit skewed. And unfortunately, there may be some misgivings on how some people provided information, because all that was asked was to fill out a form, right? And in filling out that form, you were provided with the freedom to go unmasked. And I think that may be some of the holdup for some people, that they're afraid that their job may be at stake. For me, I was afraid that someone may kill me or my daughter. So again, I'm in favor of the mask mandate, and I look forward to the vote, and hopefully you will continue doing what's best for everyone involved. I yield.
We have Morgan Gleason Fenton. You should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak, members of the board. I've been with the district for about 4.5 years, and I just wanted to also thank you so much for taking this step to mandate the vaccines. I know it's a hard decision, obviously, and as someone with an immunocompromised family member, stepping outside my house for the past 1.5 years means literally taking family members' lives into my hands. It's very serious. It doesn't get any more serious than that. So I just want to say I really appreciate the step. When going to work is a matter of life and death, I don't see how I could possibly feel safe going to work unless there's masking, social distancing, and a vaccine mandate. So thank you. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay. We have no more speakers for public comment. Another hand popped up. Chloe C. You should be able to unmute your mic.
And I just want to say here again, I appreciate all the comments, and I know sometimes it's hard to get your words together and your thoughts together to speak in front of us, but this is really the best opportunity we have as board members to hear from the employees on both sides of this important question, and we really appreciate it. Go ahead, Chloe.
Okay.
Good afternoon, board members and fellow employees. My name is Chloe Chalk. That's what the C stands for. I'm an employee here at the district, and I'm also a ratepayer. And I'm speaking to the board to thank you all for making the difficult decision to require mandatory vaccinations. My sister works as a physician in a hospital and has had to intubate numerous COVID patients who have not been vaccinated. Just this week, her entire department was handicapped by the spread of the Delta variant among medical residents, with some staff having to work 20-hour days to handle their caseload along with additional complications caused by COVID. We are absolutely in this together, and I do feel that mandatory vaccinations is an absolutely vital step in the right direction. 4.3 million cases in California, 38 million cases in the United States, 213 million in the world, with a total of 4.4 million deaths worldwide. If one death is too many, how do we respond to 4.4 million of them? I don't know the full answer, but a part of the solution involves the vaccine. I once again fully support and applaud the board for making the decision to mandate the vaccine. With this difficult vaccine mandate decision, I feel respected, empowered, and appreciated. And I thank you for making that choice.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speakers on the line for public comment before we conclude this item? Okay, I see no other hands.
All right. Board comments, questions, or Clifford, do you have a particular other way you want to proceed?
No, I think hearing from the board members would be a good next step, President Lenny.
Great. Don, you want to kick it off?
Sure, I'll kick it off since I did last time. First, as President Lenny said, I do appreciate all the comments, those who were in favor of what we did and those who disagreed with what we did. I think it's important to hear from all spectrums of the philosophical issue over vaccines and mandates. And I'm still in the camp of having the requiring vaccines. Now, there's a couple of things in comments. I think Jason is one who brought up the reaction thing. And I don't know, we haven't addressed that as an issue, and I haven't heard many people having negative reactions to the vaccine. But I would like to know if there are other entities that similar to ours that are dealing with that as an issue and how they're going to address it. And if that's one way to help alleviate some issues of concerns with employees, I don't have a problem looking at that and having it brought into a policy. Again, I don't know if any other entity has done that. And again, had people gotten vaccinated when the vaccines became available in this country, we wouldn't be where we are today. And we need to be honest about that. And I think everybody can agree that if we had had the vaccination rate that was sought after, we wouldn't be dealing most likely with the degree of severity that Delta variant and future variants that are going to get stronger by the lack of vaccinations that are not happening. There were 3 people I know last week who came down with COVID-19, the Delta variant. One has been released from the hospital. The other was released and had to go back and has blood clots now. And the other person I don't know about. And these were folks in Contra Costa County, and I found out via Facebook. And I don't know whether they're vaccinated or not. I would assume they probably were not, based on a lot of assumptions reading Facebook. But the fact is, these people are getting sick. And to have somebody who can pass on, first of all, yes, I've been vaccinated and I could have a breakthrough. But I also know if I have the breakthrough of COVID-19, Delta variant, I'm not going to end up in the hospital, and I can be, as it happened with other people, within 3 to 4 days, you're back in the saddle again. If you don't have the vaccine, the likelihood is you're going to end up in the hospital, and in some cases, a person's life may be lost. It is unconscionable to me that we could have employees unknowingly passing the vaccine on to passing the COVID-19 Delta variant or whatever variant comes along to other employees and their family members. We have a responsibility. You go to school, you're required to get a measles, rubella, and I'm not sure what other vaccinations when you're 5 or 6 years old. I don't remember them. But that's required in our state. And it's required for a reason, so that those who go to school are not going to end up ill. We got rid of polio in this country as a result of that. It's only in 2 countries now where they don't have vaccines going on for different reasons. We have an obligation to not only our employees, but also to their family members and to the public And I think the approach that we're taking is a reasonable approach. And yes, we're going to work with the unions and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I have full trust in Clifford and his team to do just that. And there may be some changes to what we're looking at doing based on those conversations. But we need to have the conversations. We need to have an honest discussion. This isn't about your personal rights. This is about the rights of everybody in our society, our employees, our family members, and everybody else who has a person in their family who might not be able to get the vaccine for different reasons, but they could end up in the hospital or dead as a result of it. We have a moral responsibility, and that's what I view this as.
Lisa.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank everyone who spoke today, whether for or against. It's important that we know your thoughts. So I thank you for doing that. Obviously, this is a difficult situation, but COVID has provided us with a difficult situation. Unnavigated waters. I fully believe in one's rights, but only when those rights don't detrimentally affect others. We have a 2,000, give or take, workforce, and we need to protect them all. So let's do the right thing by all of our employees. And I recognize also the devil is in the details. So let's work through those details and get it done. We have to protect everyone and not just a select group. So please, I just urge all employees who are hesitant to take the vaccination to just do it if you don't believe it will affect your body. And if you believe it will affect your body in some detrimental way, talk to your physician and see what your physician says. And maybe your physician can write you a note of exemption. But otherwise, we have to do this. It's very important. And I just want everyone, if possible, to get on board. Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you. I'm going to try hard not to say all that Lisa said and John said, but there's a key point here. We are in this all together. It's very, very clear. And that means we have a responsibility to everyone we work with and everyone we live with. I think about the three individuals that I've known that died because of this disease. And they were too doggone young. Now, yes, I view anybody that's younger than me as being too doggone young. But, you know, these were good people who did good things in their community. And the vaccine wasn't available for them. And I hear folks that have these strong feelings. And one of the things that strikes me is, okay, so you don't get the vaccine and you get sick, you're going to be treated with experimental drugs. Because they're pulling these drugs out of this, that, and every place else, trying to save your life. I've always figured that, you know, we're all going to die someday, but by golly, I don't want to die a miserable death. I want to die in my time, when it is my time. And a disease like this, where a simple set of shots can act to keep it from hurting me, then indeed I'm going to do that. And if I need a booster, I'll get the booster as well. So I thank everybody for their thoughts, but I'm here to plead for our moral obligation to those we live with and those we work with. Please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Marguerite?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to add my appreciation for everyone that's taken the time to participate in this discussion, and I'm sure many of our employees that are listening in. You know, when I hear a lot of our workforce refer to EBMUD as a company, and we actually aren't a company. We're a public agency. We're a public health agency. We provide the one element that no one can live without, and that's water. And so I really do view us as, you know, we're a public health agency, and that's what we do. We provide water to people that is safe for them to drink. And we treat that water with chemicals, right, to do that. So that's where I start. And as far as, you know, the science and what it has demonstrated, we know that the worst Delta variant outbreaks are in counties in the United States where vaccination rates are low. We also know that they're in places where people don't mask, and I appreciate all of our employees following the masking, social distancing, hand washing protocols that are essential. Because Delta is very transmissible, as transmissible as the chickenpox. What we do know, though, is that those who have been vaccinated, while they may have similar viral loads to those who are unvaccinated, that they have them for a much shorter period of time. So the period of transmissibility, along with masking, social distancing, and hand washing, reduces the likelihood of someone who's vaccinated exposing others to the disease, even if they've ended up somehow being exposed themselves. And if they become ill, they're likely to miss less work, which goes back to our duty to, you know, basically keep people on the job, keep them healthy. And so I have no problem at all with the policy that we are agreed on the 10th. And, you know, to the extent that there's flexibility that can be worked out around deadlines and other things, working with staff in the meet and confer process, I mean, that I have no problem with that. We are, you know, I lost a friend last week to long COVID. She got it in 2020. She's 38 years old, a mother of 4. And she died of a heart attack 10 days or a week ago, caused, they are very, very certain, by COVID and as a delayed reaction. So, you know, she seemed fine the 6 weeks ago that I saw her and spent time with her. So I don't, you know, all of us who think, well, we're in an age group that isn't going to get impacted, think again. Think again. She didn't know because she's so fit that when her oxygen levels became depleted, she had no idea, because she uses oxygen very efficiently as a long distance runner. So her oxygen dipped to 82 or some ridiculous amount like that. And she didn't know it until, you know, her husband found her heart not beating in bed. So this disease is not something to take lightly. It is the largest public health issue we have faced, and we're a public health agency. So I will leave it at that.
Andy? And then Bill.
I very much thank the comments that my colleagues have made, particularly Director Young, explaining what the CDC has told us about the efficacy of vaccines to prevent spread. While there's more to learn, because this disease is evolving to become more virulent and more deadly and more of a concern. the CDC has provided information that indicates that vaccination is helpful to prevent spread. And that leads me to find that this is important for a safe workplace. I hear the comments from our employees discussing concerns with us. I encourage our bargaining units to have further discussions with our management at the table to talk about impacts. And I remain very interested in making sure that our supplemental leave policies are appropriate for the situation. I also take the view, subject to further advice from our counsel, but I tend to take the view that our requirement of a vaccine that causes an employee to get the vaccine for the first time would mean that while this is rare, and any risk of injury would be subject to workers' compensation. And I am expective of bipartisan legislation that would move the COVID vaccine into the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. I think it's important to know that that program is funded by a 75-cent surcharge that's only paid to 1 in 1 million people who receive a vaccine. That means vaccination claims for injury are very rare. And most of those claims are for the way the vaccine was administered into the arm. So I really look to the CDC and the FDA for this guidance, and find that the FDA's approval of the vaccine for general use for the Pfizer vaccine means that it's safe and effective. And but for those rare injuries, I would be very supportive of accepting some workers' compensation for it, subject to all of the proof requirements. But I remain very confident that this is a safe vaccine, and it's important to get it, because the risks of getting sick and very injured, if not dead from COVID-19, are worth the concerns.
Bill.
Yes. First, I'd like to associate myself with all the comments that the members of this board who spoke before me have made. And I'd like to thank everyone who came out to speak on the subject, because it means you are aware. What I hope you are aware of is a pandemic and what it is, where it comes from. It's not about personal rights, it's about our ability to protect ourselves. In the job place, we're first in line out there. In many instances, our services help prevent the spread of the virus. I want to say that if you can really understand, we're talking about the community of the people of the world against a virus. You don't make determination or decisions personally that violate that. 2 months ago, we thought we were past the pandemic and we were headed in the right direction. And then it rose again. Thousands of people have died. Don't be one of them, and don't let our family at EBMUD be one of them. You may not know it, but I have an older sister that had COVID. She survived. She survived because she took the vaccine. She followed the medical protocols. She was in a nursing home. And I just want to say that's how close it comes to me. and I followed all the details. I hope, it is my hope, that we can overcome any opposition we have. Think of your own family and think of the workplace environment, which all of us as directors on the board have sworn to make safe for you. Your contribution to that making safe is essential. So I close with the fact that I'm very much behind the policy because I think it's in your best interest. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bill. Risha, I think you said you had another speaker.
Yes, we have George Cleveland. Wait a minute. George, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha, President Linney, board members, GM Chan, staff. I just want to return to the testing component. You know, there are people that won't be able to get it because they're immunocompromised. And I think I'll go out on a limb and say some of them probably want to get the vaccine to protect themselves, but they can't. So I don't quite understand the rationale of making someone who wants the vaccine but cannot get it, for something that's beyond their control, to have them take their own time off to get it and to pay for it as well. That's wrong. And that's all I have to say.
All right, George. And I think, you know, that kind of detail is appropriate to bring up in the meet and confer and see if
it is, but you need to know about it.
Take that.
Well, I thought, actually, Clifford, could you clarify? Because I seem to recall that what we actually said was that for those with medical or religious exceptions, that testing, I mean, it still need to be tested, but would be something that was.
Right.
You're correct, Director Young. What we had discussed was for those employees who have medical or religious exemption, who have to go testing, that would be on the district's time and cost. That is correct.
Okay. All right. That's not what it says.
All right. Thank you, George. So going last here, not a whole lot more I need to add to the comments by board members that have already been made. But I just want to emphasize I am in full support of this policy. And in addition to my concern for the safety of our employees and to each other of our employees that way, and we also, I believe, have an obligation as a public agency to our greater community. We know the only way we're going to bring this to an end is through vaccinations. I don't think any of us want to wear masks the rest of our lives. I think that masking obviously has a critically important part of this, but vaccine also has a critically important part to this. And so does all the rest of the things that we're doing right now. This is a very aggressive virus. It's something that we need to bring to bear all the tools that we can, or else we're going to be a crippled agency, we're going to be a crippled society in dealing with this. And so it's, like I say, an obligation, responsibility I think that we have to our employees, to our community, to our fellow citizens, to the immunocompromised, to be able to get a vaccination, to get the vaccination, get it sooner than later, and let's end this. The science is clear. The medical trials have been clear on this. They're just, again, I respect a difference of opinion on this, but I think for East Bay MUD, this is a requirement that we're going to need to have and keep going forward.
Thank you, board members. And so, again, I appreciate the discussion and also all the comments from our employees and the recognition that this is a worldwide pandemic. I don't think we can forget the fact that, you know, we literally shut down the world because of this virus. And what we know from the history of viruses, that the only way to stop it is to stop the virus from mutating. And the way you stop that is to get people vaccinated. But what I also heard from the board is that with the policy remains intact, to talk to the unions to see where there's flexibility in the timing of how long it would take to get vaccinated, and in other areas where we can be more flexible while still following the science and the recommendations of the CDC. So what I will take back from this conversation is to continue to move forward with this policy, work with the unions to discuss the impacts, and see where we can build in flexibility and add additional time to let people get vaccinated, as well as give them time to have those discussions about the importance of this policy and what we're trying to do. Did I capture that correctly, President Lenny?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you, Clifford.
Thank you.
And we'll be getting, continue to get the updates on these policies and the coronavirus going forward. So
you will. Okay. Moving on to the next topic. This is the Los Vaqueros update. Linda Hu, our manager of water supply, will provide the update. This will be our last update before the September 14th board meeting, where we'll consider joining the JPA, as well as appointing representatives to serve on the JPA. So with that introduction, I'll pass it to Linda Hu.
Thank you, Clifford. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Right. Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. As Clifford mentioned, I'm here to present you with an update of the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project, and in particular, the proposed Joint Powers Authority, or I'll refer that to as JPA in this presentation. And as you know, staff's been evaluating EBMUD's participation in the upcoming Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project. And recently, we completed negotiations of the proposed JPA terms, and would like to brief the board on the status and also the next steps. Next slide, please. So for this update today, I'll cover the project background, the benefits of LVE, or Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion, to East Bay MUD, the near-term driver, the proposed JPA, and upcoming appointment of JPA representatives, the multi-party agreement amendment number 3, and also the near-term schedule. And after the briefing today, we will bring to the board for consideration at the September 14 meeting the 3 items: the LVE JPA agreement, appointment of the East Bay MUD representatives to the JPA board, and also the multi-party agreement amendment. Next slide, please. So as you know, Contra Costa Water District is proposing to expand the reservoir from 160,000 acre feet to 275,000 acre feet. The project has multiple benefits of water supply reliability, enhancing water quality, and water for the wildlife refuges. There are 8 potential partners, including East Bay MUD. The other partners are ACWD, Contra Costa Water District, Grasslands, San Luis, SFPUC, Value Water, and Zone 7. And the total estimated project capital cost is $900 million. And a California Water Commission grant of $470 million will fund about half of the project cost. The remainder of the project cost, or $430 million, will be funded by a combination of federal grants and also local shares. Contra Costa Water District is pursuing federal grant funding for up to 25% of the total project cost. For East Bay MUD, the focus of our evaluation to participate has been on whether to secure 30,000 acre feet of dedicated storage in Los Vaqueros Reservoir. The estimated cost for East Bay MUD ranges from $50 million to $100 million, depending on how much federal grant funding is secured. Next slide. So we're now on slide 4, titled Background. As I mentioned, participation in LVE would allow us to have dedicated storage in the expanded reservoir. The general concept of East Bay MUD's potential participation is that we could bring in supplies such as wet year supplies to store in LVE, and then in exchange access that supply in droughts through a CVP transfer from Contra Costa Water District at Freeport. As part of this project, we could also wheel water for the partners, such as from Freeport to LVE, when it doesn't interfere with operating Freeport and our system for our own use, and does not negatively impact Freeport. When partners use Freeport and our system for wheeling, they would pay us the applicable facility use fees. Next slide. The benefits of LVE for East Bay MUD, they're aligned with the goals of our strategic plan, which includes ensuring a reliable and high quality water supply for the future. The benefits include improving reliability during droughts or emergencies by having dedicated storage locally that we can fill during excess wet conditions and then divert the supply when needed. This also increases resilience to climate change and support integration with regional partnerships. Also, this project provides environmental benefits by providing environmental water to the Mokelumne through gain sharing and by providing water to support wildlife refuges in the Central Valley. Next slide. A near-term driver for this project is the California Water Commission feasibility hearing that's coming up on October 20th. This hearing will determine whether the project is still eligible to receive the $470 million in grant funding through WSIP, which is the Water Storage Investment Program. So to maintain eligibility for WSIP grant funding, 3 criteria listed here must be met. First is the project feasibility study, which has been completed. Second, the draft environmental documents are complete and those are available for public review, which has been met. And the demonstration of commitment for not less than 75% of the non-public benefit cost share of the project. And that can be met by a joint letter of support from the partners and also formation of the JPA, which is key to demonstrating feasibility. Next slide. So we're now on slide 7, titled Joint Powers Authority. Over the past year, while staff continue to evaluate our participation in LVE, we've also been negotiating with Contra Costa Water District and the potential partners on the Joint Powers Authority agreement terms since last May, actually. An East Bay MUD ad hoc committee consisting of 3 board members was formed last September to provide guidance and direction on negotiations of the JPA. The ad hoc held 3 meetings, which occurred in October and April to discuss and vet the proposed JPA framework and the terms. And during these negotiations, a total of 17 drafts or revisions of the terms were created while in discussions with the financial work group and the bond council work group. And these group consists of agency staff from the 8 partners. And that effort took more than a year and culminated in a proposed executable version just earlier this month. So you can see that through this process, the proposed final JPA framework and terms, they've been thoroughly vetted and discussed. And last week, staff sent an email communication to the East Bay MUD ad hoc committee to inform the conclusion of negotiations and to update the ad hoc on developments since the last meeting was held and also the final outcome. And I just also want to recognize all the work and effort the ad hoc committee, management, and the negotiating team put into the JPA negotiations. And special thanks to Brad Ledesma, John Salmon, and Robbie Hane on East Bay MUD's negotiating team. Next slide, please. So the proposed JPA will have 9 members you see listed here, including DWR as an ex officio member, and that's because of a condition of the CalFed funding for the original Los Vaqueros Reservoir. The JPA agreement, what that does is establish a framework for governance of the project to facilitate upcoming negotiations of several major project agreements, which will then formalize the member agency's respective share of the project costs and benefits, and also the rights of the JPA and the members to use the diversion, the conveyance, and the storage facilities. Joining the JPA at this time does not require an irrevocable financial commitment. It does not require commitment to fund or participate in upcoming project construction operations. Those commitments will come later when additional key agreements are negotiated. Joining the JPA does, however, require funding pre-construction activities while a member of the JPA. And there are opportunities to exit the JPA before the final funding agreement is signed. You can see these off-ramps are listed here. They include failure to execute the interim funding agreement, failure to execute a service agreement, withdrawal of other members, if the engineer's estimate comes in too high, if state funding does not materialize, or inability to secure a supply to make use of the project. So I just want to emphasize the key takeaways that joining the JPA is non-binding, and there will be sufficient time to withdraw later if the costs and benefits are not favorable to East Bay MUD. And staff will bring the proposed JPA to the board for consideration at the next meeting on September 14th. Next slide, please. So once established, the JPA will be governed by a new board of directors comprised of representatives of each of the member agency that will provide governance of the project. Each member agency must designate and appoint a primary representative and also an alternate to act as its representatives on the JPA board. The representative could be an elected official or a senior level manager. We are aware that many of the M&I members have appointed or are planning to appoint elected officials to serve in both the primary and alternate roles. Some are appointing a board member as the primary representative and then a senior member as the alternate. The AG members, we're aware, are appointing senior managers as both primary and alternate representatives. So there is flexibility up to the member agencies on those appointments. The appointment of the JPA board representatives must be completed within 30 days of executing the JPA agreement, and the first meeting of the JPA board will be held within 60 days. You see listed here are some of the initial JPA board activities. Those include attending monthly meetings plus internal meetings with staff to help prepare for those meetings, electing the JPA board officers such as the chair and the vice chair, setting up bylaws, hiring consultants or individuals to serve in key roles, such as the executive director. Although Contra Costa Water District will serve as the initial administrator until key hires are selected. And another board activity is providing guidance on negotiations of agreements between the JPA and the member agencies and regulatory organizations. The JPA board also has other duties, including approving the budget and also voting, such as on key project agreements that will specify cost allocation and benefits among the members. So once again, the board will be asked to appoint East Bay MUD's primary and alternate representatives to the LVE JPA at the next board meeting, when the board will also consider joining the JPA. Next slide, please. So now we are on slide 10, which is titled Multi-Party Agreement Amendment Number 3. Let's go over the funding to carry out project pre-construction activities through the multi-party agreement. The current approved agreement that we are operating under includes funding sources from early state funding. The total project cost share is 8.9 million, of which East Bay MUD's share is 1.2 million. And the scope covers 90% design of the dam raise, pre-design of other facilities, the financial modeling, outreach, and also tasks needed to maintain state grant eligibility. And the current agreement expires in December of this year. A proposed amendment, which is amendment number 3, is needed to fund additional pre-construction activities, including JPA, upcoming JPA administration, project permitting, 100% design, further financial modeling, and just continuation of tasks needed to maintain grant eligibility. And the total cost share for the proposed amendment number 3 is for the local cost share portion is 6.2 million, of which East Bay MUD's share is just under 900,000. And the board will also be asked to consider this amendment at the September 14th meeting. Next slide, please. To summarize the next steps, on September 14th, staff will bring to the board the 3 items for consideration. On the JPA agreement, appointments of East Bay MUD representatives to JPA board, and also amendment number 3 to the multi-party cost share agreement. And the California Water Commission feasibility hearing is scheduled for October 20th. The goal is to form the JPA before that hearing. And ahead of the hearing, Contra Costa is working with the partners to prepare a joint letter of support and also a joint press release. And once the JPA is formed, the first JPA board meeting will be held by mid-November and monthly meetings to follow. Next slide, please. That brings me to the end of this presentation. I'm happy to listen to any comments or take any questions.
President Lenny, if I can speak real quick. First, Linda, thank you. That was a great presentation. I'm very encouraged to see our activity in expansion of Los Vaqueros. I think everything that staff has done working is protecting the interests of East Bay Mud from both the financial standpoint and providing opportunity for potentially long-term water supply needs, especially when we're looking at a drought. 30,000 extra feet of water is critical in what it could do for our ratepayers. So I'm encouraged by everything that's happening, and thank you very much for your leadership on this.
Thank you for your comments.
Job well done.
Thank you, Director Mellon.
I realize I was on mute here, but thanks.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. I think we've got it.
Thank you, Linda.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
So for the last presentation is just an update on our capital project construction activities. I just want to share with the board, our budget includes a significant increase in the number of capital projects that we have, really at levels that we haven't seen in the last decade. For many of the large projects, we do provide detailed updates to the planning committee. But what I wanted to do today was just to highlight for the entire board a few of the large projects, but really more importantly, to share with you how we're partnering with our contractors, engaging in the communities and the cities, and managing activities during construction. And Jimmy Yole, our Director of Engineering and Construction, will provide that update.
If I can interject real quick, I know Clifford and Risha are aware. I emailed them. I'm on the East Coast, and I have another obligation now, so I'm going to sign off. A very good meeting, but thank you for everything, and I'll look at the slide deck later that Jimmy's providing. Thank you.
Only 6:30, John.
Yeah, I know. I got up at 7 o'clock East Coast time, which is 4 o'clock your time. Okay, thank you.
Stay safe and be well.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Good afternoon again, President Linney and members of the board. You get to see my masked face for the second time today. I'm here to give you a kind of an update on our capital project construction work. And as Clifford mentioned, we have a significant amount of work coming up in the next 3 years. And this first slide, oops, it's not forwarding for me. Thank you. So this first slide actually is a historical look at our construction activity over the last 13, 14 years. And the blue bars show the actual contract payments that we've made to the various contractors who have been constructing projects for us. And you can see that it's varied by year. If you go back to the 2008 to 2009 period, that is when we were constructing the Folsom South Canal Connection project. And also we had the San Pablo Dam upgrade. So we had a significant expenditure in capital construction during that time. And then it kind of dropped after that and has gradually been rising. We had a peak in 2018 when we had the ozone projects in place. And this past year and continuing into the future, we're seeing a significant increase in the amount of capital construction work. What also the line that you see above there is the actual number of contracts that we have been managing each year. And you can see in the next 3 years, that number is also the highest that we've had in the last 15 years. So the takeaway here is that in the next 3 years, we have the highest projected 3-year contract payments projected, and also the highest number of contracts in any 3-year period that we've had in the last 15 years. So short message there is that we have a lot of contract construction work coming up. I wanted to give you an idea of where these projects are located, and this slide shows the projects that are located up country, and we have a few of them there. And probably the significant one is the upgrade of the Pardee chemical plant. We have McCollum Aqueduct relining, and I talked about that a little bit during the discussion on the aqueduct leak and the emergency. So, and we also, and also the aqueduct coating. So we do have projects that we had planned on the McCollum aqueducts, and unfortunately the leak did occur in an area that we had planned for relining work, but obviously we didn't get to that before the leak occurred. If we move to the service area, we have a lot more projects within the service area, and I didn't provide labels on all of the different facilities that we'll be working on, so they are shown here. But the three that I'm going to highlight for you are the Orinda Water Treatment Plant Disinfection and Chemical Systems Improvement Project. We have upgrade of improvements to the reliability of our Upper San Leandro water treatment plant, and in the same contract, chemical system improvements at USL and also at Sobrante. And then finally, there is a pipeline crossing of the Oakland Inner Harbor is one of the main sources of supply to the city of Alameda. So I'm going to go through each one of those in a little bit more detail, and it's really this is really a high level look at them, because we do plan on bringing each of these projects to the planning committee shortly before they go into the construction phase. So for Orinda, this is the single largest project that we have in the upcoming years. Estimated cost of about $220 million. And it really is to improve the disinfection reliability and reduce disinfection byproducts at the plant. There are also some operation and maintenance facilities that will get improved, and we have upgrades to the chemical systems to improve the safety of those components. Because this is such a large project and there are some specialized areas of work, we have pre-qualified. I think there's 7 general contractors who have been pre-qualified to actually perform this work, and we've also pre-qualified some of the specialty subcontractors that will be participating. You can see the schedule there. This is the first one that's going to be out of the gate. We'll be advertising pretty soon. It says August 2021. It might actually be September before we advertise, but we're looking to award a contract in the November timeframe and start construction in the spring of next year. Second ones are the upgrades at Upper San Leandro and Sobrante water treatment plants. This is the second largest project that we have. Construction costs of about $101 million. And at USL, there are a number of systems at that plant that need to be upgraded to ensure that we have that we can fully utilize the plant capacity. It will also provide us improved drought capabilities for taking Freeport water, and we're also going to be upgrading the chemical systems and improving some of the flow meters at that plant. In that same contract, we'll also be doing the chemical system upgrades at the Sobrante water treatment plant. This is also a project that has been earmarked in the federal funding bills that are coming through. It's not a lot of money, but I think we've been earmarked for about $3.5 million, and I thought I would highlight that. In terms of the schedule, this is one that's going to advertise next year and hopefully start construction in the summer of 2022. And construction duration obviously is 3 years here. I didn't mention it for Orinda, but that's also the longest project we have, which will be about a 5-year construction duration. The last project I wanted to highlight was the Oakland Inner Harbor pipeline crossing. And this is a significant amount of pipeline. It's 3,000 feet of, the line in blue there is 3,000 feet of pipe underneath the Oakland Inner Harbor. And then there are approaching pipelines that will also be upgraded about 10,000 feet on both the Oakland and Alameda sides of the estuary. And then the green line you see on that is actually is the laydown area for the pipeline that will be pulled across the estuary. It's going to be an HDPE pipeline installed by horizontal directional drilling. Basically drill under the estuary and then pull the pipe through. This project also has multiple easements that go along with it, and we're in the final stages of negotiating all of those easements. We hope to award a contract in February of next year, and the construction duration is about 2.5 years. I wanted to move on and talk a little bit about how we actually manage these projects and hopefully do it successfully. The district to contractor business relationship is important. We try to keep good relationships with the contractors. We know, most of our contractors do very well. We often have challenges with some, but whatever the situation, this is generally the relationship. Our core team is our construction management and inspection group, and they coordinate with all of the other groups in the district that are involved, from our design groups to public information, general counsel's office, our regulatory compliance group, and one thing that I didn't include here is our client department, which could be operations and maintenance, or it could be another department that owns a particular facility. The contractor also has their suppliers and subcontractors, but with all of these different players, the key communication line is between the district's construction management team and the contractor. And we use a process that, which probably a lot of people have heard about, that's a partnering approach. And it's really a hand-in-hand relationship to establish that business partnership, develop shared goals so that we work together really well, and deepen our mutual understanding and collaboration of what the district is looking for from a project, and what challenges the contractors might have in actually implementing what we want to do. One of the key elements of that is proactively identifying the potential challenges and developing creative solutions. And all of this happens outside of the contractual relationship, but it's also important to recognize that it is not a substitute for the actual contractual relationship. We found that this approach works very well, and the projects that work out the best are the ones that utilize this partnering approach to the fullest.
Jimmy, just a little off subject, but what's the picture in the background that we keep seeing?
So actually, a good question there. This is actually a picture of a construction project in progress. It's actually not building anything. This is the demolition of the Seneca Reservoir.
I'm sorry, of what?
Seneca Reservoir near Bishop
Okay.
O'Dowd.
Thank you. So
the other significant aspect of any successful project is the community engagement piece, and we engage the community all throughout the project, actually even before we start construction. So there's extensive outreach that's completed prior to construction, with meetings with different cities, community groups, and other agencies. And then with our public information group, we develop an outreach plan that includes the project map and communication list, who we need to target, and the various methods we use. We use all the available options to us, with mailers and WaterSmart, emails, social media posts, and phone calls. And the idea here is basically to be able to respond to residents' questions and concerns as the construction is proceeding. The community affairs staff also attends the meetings that the construction group has with the contractor, so they are up to date on what's happening, and they're able to provide those regular updates to the cities and community using the same methods that I outlined earlier. And then finally on significant projects that might have that may be really high profile, and the three that I mentioned earlier could qualify in that category, we would feature significant media information to illustrate the infrastructure work that we're doing, and we look at these as opportunities to actually engage with the public and show them the good work that we're doing. So the last thing I wanted to mention is some of our typical construction mitigations, and we do this on every project. We have standard approaches to mitigating the very common construction impacts. These can vary based on location and type of construction, or whether there's a CEQA mitigation monitoring required. But in general, there are 5 things that we always do. There's always a project sign posted at the job site with the name and the community affairs contact information. We have standard work hours, which can vary depending on the type of work that we do, or maybe a location. An example, for large concrete pours, those generally take a long time and extend more than the normal work day. Or and then they could be restricted, where we may be in front of a school location, and so the hours of work are restricted to avoid the drop-off and pickup times. Dust control and monitoring for any dust generating activities. It's a standard part of our construction specifications. And also noise control and monitoring is also included. And we do have restricted hours for significant noise generating activities. Maybe we're doing some demolition or some really loud jackhammering. Those hours, those won't be able to start early. They start a little bit later in the day. And then finally, where there's traffic control required, we have traffic control plans developed and implemented as needed for those particular projects. So just to
Jimmy?
Yes.
Hi, before you go to next steps, can you back up? Yes, thank you. So this slide reads typical construction mitigations. Are they typical, or are they standard construction mitigation?
I think you could classify them as standard and typical. They're standard, and we all include them in every contract that we have.
All right, that's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Yes. And then finally, I just wanted to, our next steps here, we do have the 3 projects that I highlighted earlier. We have planning committee briefings scheduled for each one of those. And the first will be actually at the September the 14th meeting with the Orinda project. We're scheduling the Oakland Inner Harbor Crossing project for November the 9th. And the USL Reliability Improvements project for December the 14th. The latter 2 projects the timing may adjust depending on when we actually, if we have a delay in going out to construction, we may adjust those times. We have a little bit more time on those. That concludes my presentations, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions, anyone?
No.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I'll just
Jimmy, I'm sorry, I had one question. I want to allow to see if other board members did first, but I'm just curious on the Cross Harbor project. Isn't there also plans? Aren't there also plans to bring recycled water across? And where does that fit into?
Yes, actually, there are. So we're building a new crossing, and once that is complete, the old crossing is one that we're hoping to utilize to pull a recycled water pipeline through in the future. But that'll be subsequent to this particular crossing project.
Okay, that's what I thought I remembered how it went. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I'll just also remind the board, as one of the pilot projects as far as our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts is to see how we can improve our community engagement activities. And that is the last item I have for the General Manager report. And again, I want to thank the board for the very good discussion today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Clifford. We'll now move to reports and director comments, committee reports, minutes from the August 10th. Planning committee were included in the agenda packet. We will now receive a report from today's redistricting ad hoc committee and finance administration committee. I'll start first. I chaired the redistricting ad hoc committee. It was our second committee meeting that we've had. Risha did a great presentation and extensive planning and rules and criteria for how we're going to go about the redistricting process. The information for the detailed information for redistricting, the data will not be available till the end of September, but we do have some preliminary data which will allow staff to get started on that. The basic timeline is to have a series of committee meetings to queue things up, and then to have some, it'll bring it to the board to take a look at a draft plan, and then have a series of public hearings and staff and board meetings to finalize it. It is in the final configuration, it's due by April 17th. It's a tighter timeline than we've had in the past for this, due to delays in getting the census data, due to the shenanigans that were done in configuring the consensus in the census in the first place. But no matter, that's the plan. We're there again, very extensive plans to make sure that the public is informed about this. The public is invited to be part of this process, and we'll see whether it materializes in a significant way. In the past, we haven't had a lot of public participation. I don't anticipate a lot, but we will make sure that we accommodate it as we go along. Finance Committee. Bill, are you the chair of that? Is that right? You have a report from today's meeting? You're on mute.
You're on mute, Bill.
Great expression, no results, no word came out. I just wanted to say the Finance Committee meeting was very lively this morning. And because we had to make up for some lost time, we had 2 monthly investment transaction reports, the months of both June and July. Very positive results, strong performance. That led us to the quarterly financial reports. And they too, it too was a lively report with much action. And I want to say, from the strong performance of the financial unit of EBMUD, the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loan, we recommended that we not do that because we're in better shape utilizing our own resource and bonding because of our strong performance. And as a result, our costs are less by going our own way this time. We left the door open for future in case. An internal audit report was heard and accepted, and the adoption of new policy and approval of revisions to the existing district policies was conducted. Some of these things have appeared on the consent calendar and other places today in the meeting. But I want to thank all the members of the Finance Committee for their lively participation, discussion, and input, and commend our finance unit for continued exceptional performance. That's my report.
Thanks, Bill. Please submit items for future consideration to the general manager. Are there any other director comments at this time? All right, thank you, everyone. Long meeting, a lot of information, and appreciate it. We will now adjourn the meeting. Next board meeting is held Tuesday, September 14th at 1:15 p.m. Meeting's adjourned.